Good morning. Welcome to the Cup of Joe with Anna and Sheila. I'm Sheila, and this is not Anna.
I'm not Anna, I'm Melinda. Good morning, everybody.
And Melinda's joining us today. Poor Anna has to go to work. You know, some of us have to do it. So we have a fabulous guest today, Anna Eskamani. She is a state rep from the Orlando area. She is one of my heroes, I think, just because of the stance that she takes on so many issues that are so meaningful today.
Yes, and issues that our representative doesn't take our point of view on.
No, I don't think he takes any point of view.
No, he doesn't.
Because he's on that MeWe thing.
Yes.
Yeah, so he's much more conservative than
We're
us.
talking about you, Mike Beltran, just so you know.
Yeah, Mike Beltran, you promised us you'd come on, so if you ever do, let us know.
Yep, let us know.
So we have Anna Eskamani on here. We're going to pop her into our stream. Hey, Anna, how are you?
Good morning.
Hi, everyone. I'm definitely going to tell Mike Beltran to hop on your show.
Yes, please do.
We tell him every week.
I'm going to tell him.
Well, welcome. Thank you. And we're so proud to have you on our show.
Thank you for the invitation. It's great to be here.
Yes, so the session's winding up, sort of. You guys are done, what, the end of April?
Correct. Yeah, April 30th. So this is a great time to talk because there's a lot of moving pieces right now, and folks need to be plugged into it.
Well, what can we expect in the next couple weeks to not happen in Tallahassee?
Well, when it comes to things you would expect not to happen, unfortunately, that would include Medicaid expansion. That would include renewable energy goals. That would include not trying to bust unions, which I can talk about soon. That would include taking any type of action for clean air or increasing unemployment benefits by a reasonable amount. I mean, hopefully that issue is still up in the air. I've been pushing really hard to try to get unemployment benefits increased by at least $100, but the House has not moved on that at all. So that's why I feel like it might not happen, but we'll keep pushing for it. But yeah, it's a pretty difficult session when it comes to Democrats and just our values. So this past week, we have dealt with not only House Bill 1, the anti-protesting bill, but also a bill to ban trans girls from playing in sports in their schools. And so it's like culture wars, at its finest. So we're not actually working on good policy. We're working on some pretty sensational policy that's going to damage people's lives.
Well, and I just saw that there's going to be a vote next week on the tap to toilet bill. So we're going to start drinking the toilet to tap bill. We're going to start drinking food.
Yeah, the reclamation bill passed the House as well, and so yeah, I mean, again, it's such a mixed prioritization of issues, right? Like there are so many topics that I think actually would be bipartisan if we actually put them up for a vote. But because these are issues that impact corporate greed or corporate accountability or set environmental goals that corporations don't want to follow, we are constantly up against a opposition that just won't budge on some really essential issues. So it creates an environment where you are constantly playing defense. And I tell folks all the time, sometimes it's not about actually winning these fights. It's about how hard you fight, even when you know you're going to lose. And that very much becomes just the Tallahassee mentality for Democrats.
Well, I heard you on the floor the other day on the trans bill, and I just want to applaud you because I think it's something that people don't understand, the discrimination in the state of Florida against transgender youths.
Totally. It became pretty clear to me on the House floor the first day that we had questions on this bill and presented amendments on this bill. And the Democratic caucus, though small as mighty, we filed 18 amendments on this bill. I mean, it took 4 to 5 hours to hear all of our amendments. We asked questions for every amendment. Some of them we took to the board. I mean, we gave a lot of opportunities for the Republican members to vote to make this bill less harmful. Many noble and intentional opportunities to say, make this bill less harmful. Don't ban every trans girl. replacement therapy or who have hormone blockers. Like legitimately options for you to make this bill less harmful. Nothing passed. Nothing passed. And it became pretty clear to me that most of my colleagues have never even met a trans person, let alone call a trans person a friend. And when I asked the bill sponsor for any cases in the state of Florida where a trans girl won a scholarship over a cis girl or a trans girl on a team that her team kept beating other teams, no evidence whatsoever. So again, these topics are not based on any type of problem solving. It's really about creating more problems in the sake of political rhetoric, and that's not how we should govern.
That's crazy. Absolutely crazy.
Yeah, it's fear-based. It's all fear-based.
Right.
And it's sad because this can really harm the young people in Florida that are experiencing this issue. I mean, it's going to impact people, and it's not okay. It's just not okay.
That's a good point, Melinda. It is fear-based. And actually, one of my colleagues, Representative Geraldine Thompson, during her debate, brought up the notion of a boogeyman, that the Republican caucus is always looking for a boogeyman. They want someone, they want to create an enemy, and then they want to slay that enemy to give off the impression that they're heroes. And it's been immigrants for a very long time. Immigrants were the scapegoat. Immigrants were the target. In Florida, the governor's first 2 years, he made his focus attacking immigrants. And now it shifts over to trans girls, to Black Lives Matter protesters, to tech censorship and things like that. There's always a boogeyman. There always has to be something they're scared of. And that is such a sad way to live, candidly. Like, I would never want to live life constantly in fear of my neighbor or fear of those around me. But that's how they maintain power. And it's also, exploited through media outlets like Newsmax and Fox News and so forth. And it takes a lot of work on our side to educate folks so there is no fear. But my goodness, they make it very difficult to do that.
Well, you can tell we're not professionals because the guy behind us is cutting his grass.
I love it.
We're going to sneak a little closer to the mic so that you can actually hear us. And I
just want to say there is nothing more Florida than someone mowing grass. Like working from home during the pandemic. I mean, there's always lawn work, and I'm just like, this is so Florida. There's always someone doing yard work.
I think you should pass a law that you can only cut your grass on Saturdays after 10 a.m.
I love it.
So one of the things we wanted to talk to you about too was redistricting, and we know that that's coming up soon. They haven't really released the census data, although my friends in Rhode Island are whining already that they're not going to have a congressional seat. They're losing one. Are we safe as far as the state goes with representation at congressional level?
Yeah, it's a great question. So because of former President Trump's incompetency, and I love being able to say former President Trump, by the way, but because of his incompetency, the U.S. Census data is delayed. And so we don't even have U.S. Census data. We're being told that we won't have it until the summer. And so with that said, the legislature hasn't convened a redistricting committee yet. There's a chair in the House, but no members yet. So we are waiting for those announcements to be made. Now, folks should realize that in the state of Florida, lawmakers draw the maps. We draw the maps for our state House seats, for our state Senate seats, and for the congressional seats, which makes no sense to me. It should be a third-party commission. But unfortunately, that's the reality we have today. Now, back in 2010, Florida voters approved 2 fair district amendments. And these amendments are supposed to ensure that maps that are drawn have to be compact, and they can't jump like geographical, natural barriers and things like that. They're supposed to be lines that are equitably drawn. They also are not supposed to favor one party over the other. But of course, despite fair districts, we saw the maps that were drawn in 2012, where 2 different lawsuits were filed on the state Senate seats and the congressional seats, which led years later to new maps being drawn and whole new elections happening in 2016, leading to some Democratic wins because of how these seats were drawn to be more equitably representative of the area. Now, we have a whole new state Supreme Court now, which means if maps are drawn and lawsuits take place, it might be a different outcome. And so we need everyone to be engaged in the redistricting process as soon as this committee convenes. We need constituents across the state to be watching it, to be advocating, to draw your own maps that reflect the natural lines of your community that don't separate communities but are equitably drawn within city limits to reflect the population within their community. So we need everyone to watch this process because I am concerned. I'm very concerned that maps will be drawn at a congressional level that will eliminate, in particular, Charlie Crist currency and Stephanie Murphy's currency. And those are two Democrats, one in Pinellas, one in where I am in Orange County. Those seats are potentially going to be redrawn to be more conservative in nature and not to be fair. So we really have to watch these processes closely.
Well, in our district, we have Vern Buchanan, and his district is like a square with this little bump up here, and that's us, because Fishhawk is supposedly so Republican that they just kind of looped us in.
Wow.
But, it's Waimama, it's Ruskin, it's Apollo Beach, it's no community that he
is ever concerned about because
or ever shows up.
So that he's never around here.
And his office is unresponsive, and so we're trying to figure out a way to get people engaged, and redistricting is definitely going to be it.
Oh my gosh, and I'm frustrated to hear that, the lack of engagement from a member of Congress, but I'm happy to hear that redistricting is going to be one of your issues, and I do think there are groups. One of them is called All on the Line, and they're a national group, and so they do. Yeah, that's awesome. They do so many great trainings and educational type of workshops to help folks know the process, understand the process. A decade ago, when we had redistricting back in 2010, the legislature actually hosted these statewide type of caravan meetings. Like they would go to public venues and hear from constituents about maps. And honestly, I was a student back then, and I went to these meetings and I testified on behalf of UCF students so that they wouldn't separate students in voting populations to dilute our ability to vote. And I felt like those meetings were a complete charade. Like lawmakers were just on their iPads, like not even paying attention. Of course, if I am there, I'll be paying attention. But I do think we have to push for some public accountability here and make sure that lawmakers are going to be accessible throughout the process.
Well, the funniest story I heard was in 1980, the state of Kansas was drawing the maps, and it was bipartisan committee, and they were locked in a room for about 36 hours. And the two secretaries who were responsible for each party were so mad that they took out a map and they drew the map themselves and went in and said, "This is the map you're using." And they were like, "Oh, okay."
Wow.
They were so tired of it, and I thought, we should do that down here.
That is wild. I mean, there's some really good reports on what happened in 2010, 2011. And if folks want to learn more about just some of the corruption when it came to redistricting in Florida, that's what you want to read up on, because it was so gross how maps are drawn behind closed doors by Republican consultants, and just it almost feels like a drama, like a TV drama, but it was real life that's happening in our state.
I mean, that really impacting where we live. He doesn't even represent our county.
And Jim Boyd is our senator, and I don't think I've ever heard Jim Boyd come up to this area to speak.
Nope.
And he's done appropriations, and it's like, wait a minute, we need to start fighting this man.
Right, totally. That's so frustrating.
So one of the bills I wanted to ask you about was the toilet to tap bill. And so is it true that the Republicans want us to drink our own poop? Is that what I'm hearing?
So there is a lot of news around this bill. I mean, if you talk to the bill sponsors, there are still a lot of questions around this bill. But it's supposed to allow utilities to eliminate non-beneficial surface water discharges within 5 years, instead working to make that water safe to drink. And you have to have a permit to also build new or to expand surface water discharge locations. It is supposed to incentivize development of potable reuse projects, again, with the goal of keeping water usage available for Florida's growing population. But I think there are still a lot of questions about this bill. Rick Scott actually vetoed it when it passed before. And so I have no idea what this is going to look like, to be honest. I mean, there doesn't seem to be a lot of opposition from Democrats. And I've spoken in the past to water management experts who have vowed that this bill is, there is a way to recycle reclaimed water. In particular, I've heard water folks talk about using reclaimed water in our coastal communities to try to keep salt water out of coming closer to Florida's water sources. But candidly, I'm not an expert when it comes to potable water usage, but I know that there's definitely debates on both sides, and I'm curious to see if it does get to the governor, what he'll do with it, because Governor Scott actually vetoed it several years ago.
Well, knowing the current governor and his desire to be a world leader, he'll probably let it go through and say, I'm good on the environment.
Yeah, we'll see. We'll know soon enough, for sure.
And we know you have to hop off. Do you have a final question for Anna?
I was just curious about the new bill for civics teachers, about the HB5 bill, if you wanted to touch on that just for a quick second, because my son's going to be a history teacher in high school, and said it'll impact my family. I'm going to hear about this, believe me.
Totally. So this legislative session has been a lot of culture wars, and it's very much been the Republican majority pushing forward essentially political rhetoric in the form of legislation. And so this one in particular, House Bill 5, is dubbed Portraits of Patriotism. And it's supposed to be a social studies class featuring voices of those that were negatively impacted by communism in other countries and fled to the United States. And so it really is essentially political propaganda taking shape in a classroom. Now, the bill passed the House, but it has one more committee in the Senate. And to be candid, it's very difficult for Democrats to go on these issues because they basically want us to consent to socialism or to awkwardly, try to defend the bill. Because you read these bills and it's pretty damning language. I mean, they're stating horrible acts committed by foreign governments. Now, of course, a lot of these foreign governments, there's some sort of imperialistic involvement. There's history is complex, right? And the U.S. has played a role in creating different systems that have hurt people globally, right? And we have to be real about that. And so it's super frustrating because they make us vote on these bills, but it's not really a policy that I care for. But it's also very difficult to vote against it when you're in the minority caucus and you can't stop the bill, and the legislative leadership decides what the priorities are. So we'll see if the Senate gives this bill one more hearing. At this point, it's almost the end of session, 2 weeks left, so it might not make it through. But but we'll definitely see. And I suspect the governor would totally sign that bill because it fits into his narrative as well.
It does. It totally does. And it's all fear-mongering. And Edward Bernays, who is the father of public relations, would be thrilled that all of this is going on.
Well, Anna, thank you so much. We know you have another interview to get to. We so appreciate you coming on, and we're glad we could accommodate your schedule.
Thank you.
Oh my gosh, thank you so much. Thanks for having me. Yeah, be safe out there, and hope to talk to you soon.
Bye-bye.
That was amazing.
We forgot to talk about the bill about, if there's protesters, people can run them over.
HB1.
Yes.
HB1 is the anti-protest bill. It's going to be heard tomorrow in the Appropriations Committee, which is Friday. So if you are near a phone, call the Senate, call your senator. Our senator is Jim Boyd, who happens to be on the Appropriations Committee. And while I have our wonderful viewers here, I will give you his phone number because I think we should flood.
We should flood his phone.
Okay, Jim Boyd is our senator. You can call him at 850. Can you add this to the comments, my dear? 850-487-5021. Again, 850-487-5021. That's his direct line. You can also call him in his Bradenton office, and that number is 941-742-6445. And tell him to vote no on HB1. Again,
Yes.
no on HB1. Because for all of you who were in caravans, that would be considered a protest. For all of you who did sign waving and flag waving, that would be considered a protest, and we could have gone to jail, which none of us wanted to do.
No, but I
Although,
will.
If I
I
had a
have
pool,
to.
I might have.
I know, right? So, but my thing is do they not realize that it can work the opposite way? Like,
Right.
because I was at a rally for President Biden. He was not the president yet, but I was surrounded. Literally, my car was swarmed by Trump supporters, screaming and yelling and hitting my car. And I'm like, well, if this bill were passed,
You
can I
could
just
have run them
kind of run them over a little bit?
You could have run them
Get
all
out of
over.
my way. It was very scary. And I just have to say that I never ever saw any of my Democratic compadres behaving like that. We
Never.
never did anything like that
We
I'm
might have
aware
thought
of.
it, but we never did it.
Exactly. So I don't know. I just am wondering if they really thought that through, because the only aggressive protesters that I ever encountered were Republicans.
Yep.
So
That's
just gonna
true.
put that out there. They might have wanted to think about that a little bit. Just saying.
Well, Melinda, thanks for being the co-host today.
You're very
We'll
welcome.
probably see you on another show because
Yes.
poor Miss Anna has a lot of work
She
she's
had
got
a
to
lot
do.
of work.
It's tax season and she hates
Yeah.
tax season.
I know.
So anyway, shout out to Anna and
Thanks, Anna, for letting me co-host.
to Ruth.
To Ruth. Cheers.
Cheers.